I am actually really an English major nerd. And when I meet a director and I've read the script, if I like it, I'm going to meet the director. I often have a lot to suggest to him to make it stronger. You can't get out of the room without hearing what I think. Hi, I'm Sigourney Weaver, and this is the timeline of my career. Originally, the script of Alien, written by Ron Shusett and Dan O'Bannon, was a group of 10 men on this island. And the chestburster scene was probably the one scene that Walter Hill and David Giler retained. The survivor was a man, so it wasn't so much a feminist statement as, let's do the, what people don't expect. So I was very fortunate to benefit from that. I think Ridley and those guys were all loved, strong women. So again, I was very lucky to be working with these guys. And I knew it. I knew that Ridley and our cinematographer, Derek Van Lint, were, we were often in these tiny spaces, and they were coming up with camera angles, camera positions that had never been done before. And Ridley operated throughout. So it was kind of a wild improvisation on everybody's part. And I think that adds to the danger of the scene, because it was scary for us. No one ever said the lines that were written on the script, which for me from the theater was like, but you got to roll with it. And I think, it helped the movie, that unpredictability. And we had an amazing ensemble of actors.
The food ain't that bad, baby.
You choke? What's wrong? What?
I remember, of course, the day we shot the chestburster scene, because you got down to the set and everyone was wearing a poncho, a raincoat. And Dan O'Bannon and Ron Shusett were over on the side. They were there sort of the whole time, and they were so excited. It was like Christmas morning. We had an amazing special effects team. I mean, with a bunch of little hoses and things, tubes and stuff. They really, in about not many takes, they had this thing happen to John Hurt's chest where the blood flooded all around. And then almost the next shot was the creature jumping out and being on the table going, and then took off, and we're all like, what was that? Because honestly, we didn't expect anything like that. We expected hours where they had to move a little puppet or something. What I remember about that day was John Hurt was, he played this very admirable, brave guy. So this thing had happened to him, and we were all having breakfast, and then he just started to choke. It was so realistic that I was almost in tears. I could not believe he was doing this each time as the thing started to push through. It was like watching him get in an accident time after time. It was all for the first part where the blood flooded, but I mean, that's what I was very glad that no one pointed the blood at me as they did at Veronica Cartwright, because I would have screamed. And it probably wouldn't have been a good idea for Ripley to scream. You didn't have to act at all. You were just, oh shit, What was that?
Kane, who went into that ship, said he saw thousands of eggs there. Thousands.
Thank you. That will be all.
God damn it! That's not all! Because if one of those things gets down here, then that will be all. Then all this bullshit that you think is so important, you can just kiss all of that goodbye.
I loved the fact that each time they chose a completely different director who wanted to outdo the guy before. Even before I worked with Jim on Aliens, I remember I got this script, and there was the character of Ripley on every single page. And I was like, whoa. And I couldn't understand why Fox would put that in development without mentioning it to me. But of course, they didn't. And then after I finished the French film I was doing, I went to LA to meet Jim, and he's so gracious because he said, I really wanted to meet you because I want to know what you think of the script. And I was, that's such a humble thing to say. I said, are you kidding? This is such an amazing script. It's non-stop action. You believe in the characters, you believe in everything. I thought he was just such an amazing writer. It was a tough movie for him because the British crew was like, who is this guy? Every time he set up a screening of Terminator, they wouldn't show up. They wanted Ridley Scott to be directing the second one. So it took, a while to set them straight, which Jim finally did. That's really when our friendship began. Also, when you've done a movie like Aliens together, you're really bonded with everyone who's part of it for life. And I've always been grateful to him because he took the role of Ripley and just expanded it into this, almost operatic role and experience. And it's many people's favorite movie.
Get away from her, you bitch!
I was very devoted to each director. I think they all did a great job. But I have to say that at the end of the fourth one, I was really ready to move on and do other things. And I had been doing other things, but it's a great luxury to come back to a character like Ripley. And I miss her sometimes. She was good company, she was so interesting. Even now, she feels very modern.
Okay, so she's a dog.
I remember reading the script, which I just found delightful and very moving. It had a lot of heart. When I got to the audition, Ivan was filming it. I'd just met him and I'd never been filmed before. I thought, wow, that's really serious. But I was sitting on the couch, and after Dana's sort of last line, it just didn't occur to me that they would then move to a special effect to play the dog. I just assumed, being a theater person, that I was going to play all of it. Why would they go to a dog puppet or something like that when they could have me do it? So I sort of started growling and kind of jumping around on the couch, and I picked up a cushion, I shook it, and I went, "Rrr," and I was howling and snarling, and Ivan shut off the camera and he said, "Don't ever do that again. An editor will look at that, and even though it's completely grotesque, they'll want to print it." And I said, "Oh, thank you." But I did say to him at that meeting, I said, "You should definitely have the actor playing Zool turn into the dog in front of us." And I guess after I left, he called up Harold Ramis and said, "There's an actress in here who made a very good point." And so they changed the whole script. I am actually really an English major nerd. And when I meet a director and I've read the script, if I like it, I'm going to meet the director. I often have a lot to suggest to him to make it stronger, especially in terms of structure and character. You can't get out of the room without hearing what I think. And I think actually I've been hired a little bit for that because they know that you're going to take care of that area, that character. There aren't going to be inconsistencies, that I'm going to fix all of that. I'm going to at least point it out. And I love that responsibility. The more you can strengthen the structure of the script so that it's almost just unbeatable, the better chance you have of making a good movie. I mean, I was a very quiet actor because I was just so busy enjoying them working together. And every now and then Ivan would go, "Come on, Bill, we need something." And that's how the little piano bit started. They hate that. That's just something he did.
They hate this. I like to torture them.
Bill Murray used to come over and tickle me and shake me because he thought I was so serious. I was always preparing, If I had it to do over again, I would much prefer the background of improv as a way of being in this business.
Break off one of those stems and pretend to eat. Act submissive.
I've never been so submissive in my life.
Well, I'd read the book, and I remember thinking, God, what a wonderful movie that would make. Unfortunately, they can't do it because they would compromise the gorillas, the wild gorillas in some way. So when Arnie Glimcher came to me and offered me the part, and there were actually two Gorillas in the Mist movies going at the same time, we ended up joining forces, thank goodness. It was really unknown territory. It was very important to anyone filming those groups that we were as respectful as possible. They sent me over early to I guess now I realize, to see what I do with wild gorillas moving around me. And I was with Diane's study group 5. I was brought up there by the amazing trackers they have, the Rwandan trackers. I was sitting there, and a little gorilla named Josie came over and kind of sat down right next to me and kind of went and put her arm against my arm, and it was the most incredible feeling. It was so hot. Her engine was so strong, and it was so dear. I had some pretty hairy things happen. I was knocked down by a charging silverback gorilla, and my husband arrived in Rwanda that day and saw the dailies. I guess it was the next night, and he saw this huge gorilla, first of all, come around me. There was one where he was just peeing all around me, and I'm just sitting there, I don't know. And then this big charge up the hill. It was really my POV that was the most exciting. And then, I remember just lying there very still, where I could hear him displaying above me, pulling little trees out and shaking them, because they do display a lot. But I never felt in danger. I never felt like they wanted to hurt me. I just kept a respectful distance, that they could move around me. The children were all over me all the time, pulling my hair and peeing on me and eating my food. But I never touched them because I knew if I did this to a baby, the mother would be right there, and that would put me in danger and everyone else. It's still obviously one of the most amazing experiences of my life. I miss the gorillas.
I consider us a team, Tess. And as such, we have a uniform. Simple, elegant, impeccable. Dress shabbily, they notice the dress. Dress impeccably, they notice the woman. Coco Chanel.
Well, it was Mike Nichols. If Mike Nichols calls, you go, sure, I'll play a wastebasket. Yeah, that's fine with me. I thought it was a good part. I'm actually sort of astonished at how well it works. She's such an awful character. And Mike Nichols and I both knew a kind of person who was like this. So we were having fun, not making fun of her because we liked her, but we were having fun just sort of letting her be herself. And it was just such an honor to work with Mike. He would have his editor come each morning, Sam Osteen, and they'd walk through the scene, and Sam would say, because Mike was from the theater too, he'd say, you need this shot, you need this shot, and you need that shot, but you don't need that shot or that shot. And so Mike would finish his day by 5. He knew what he needed to get, and once they got the scene from those angles, we went home. It was fabulous. We worked with Ann Roth too, as the costume designer, Melanie and Harrison. It was just an amazing ensemble. For years, I've had women come up to me, like at the airport, and go, she was so wronged, Melanie's character borrowed your clothes and took your man, and they were like, go, Catherine, and I'm like, okay. But it's so funny, when I finally got to that scene where I really lose, I was so shocked.
Oren, this is a simple misunderstanding, and you cannot.
I can and I will. Now get your, what did you call it?
Bony ass.
Right. Bony ass out of my sight.
I'm sorry, but I simply won't stand for that kind of talk.
In the back of my mind, I thought, Mike will make sure that Catherine wins. And so I went in there with so much confidence, and of course, that's not the story. I never felt like a villain. I felt maybe a little more mischievous. And I never felt like a loser until the very end when I lost. And then I was shattered.
You're boring me. I have a husband. I don't particularly feel the need for another.
You have a point there.
I think I heard about it at a birthday party for my husband from Kevin Kline, who said he'd been sent this script. I remember asking for the script, getting the script, and to me it was Chekhov. And I wanted to play the Masha character. So I was actually asked, which character do you want to play? And I said Janie. And meanwhile, they populated the film with the most incredible actors who were all working in the theater. And it was shot on a shoestring. It was such a pleasure to work with Kevin again. He was always saying things like, I think I have to use a fake nose for this. And I'd say, a fake nose? I said, Kevin, this is you. This character is you. You don't need to put on a fake nose. This is just you. But he always wanted to put on a fake nose for something. And just the whole amazing cast, it just felt like such a wonderful, like a theater production that bloomed into a movie. We had the great Joan Allen, Kate Burton, young Christina Ricci, young Katie Holmes, Elijah Wood. I mean, just, hello. It was very easy for us to just do several scenes during the day in the glass house where we were shooting. You know, I'm surprised that directors didn't make more use of such a great ensemble of sort of the same age of actor, because it was a really good idea, and I think that the film really benefited from that. And Ang, you know, is just a wonderful man and would look at you across the set and send you a direction without speaking. I don't quite understand how he did it, but he would just sort of look at you and you'd go, oh, and just sort of intuit something. Like when I was gonna reach out to open the door of my son's room at the end to see if they were all right, I knew he wanted to say something to me, and he ended up saying, too ashamed. A great pleasure to work with Ang. I've always wanted to work with him again. You get spoils working with directors like that.
Tony Madison, my personal favorite, Gwen DeMarco! Yeah!
Getting hotter, Commander.
I had really wanted to play Gwen because Gwen is much closer to me than Ripley is. I wanted to play a young woman in that world of stardom who's wants so much to be a star, and who, because she's beautiful and bosomy and blonde, no one takes very seriously, not even the commander. And I felt great compassion and sisterhood with Gwen and Tawny, you know. Again, I've been so fortunate to work with these great ensembles, you know, Tony Shalhoub and Alan Rickman. I mean, it was just an amazing group. And I wish they'd put out a director's cut of the movie, because at the last minute, DreamWorks decided to release the movie with some of the more sophisticated scenes cut that Alan was in, because it needed a kids' movie to go up against Stuart Little. And you know, why they don't put out the movie again with more of his very, very strange and wonderful scenes. And I remember Bob Gordon had written a second one, and he wouldn't give it to DreamWorks because he just felt they'd missed the boat on ours. And so we always meant to do a sequel, and then with Alan passing away, we just lost heart. But it was a great privilege to do this love letter to actors. Caveman, you come over here, please.
Get over there.
That's right, honey.
All right, come on over. Come on over.
Now, did you by any chance take a drink since he filled your canteen?
Oh, no, I'm fine. I have plenty.
Excuse me?
I might have drinking some.
Thank you. May I have your canteen, please?
Holes is funny because my daughter, who's about 8, was given Holes to read in school. One day she came up to me and she said, "Mom, there's this really awful woman in my book and you should play her." I remember being very proud of her that she was able to separate from the book and be able to say to me, "There's a really awful person and you should play her, Mom," because I think she knew I would enjoy it. But it was incredible to me to actually end up in the movie, directed and I think produced by Andy Davis, with Louis Sacker writing the script, and such an amazing young cast. And of course, the warden is quite a creation. I mean, really nightmarish, I think, from a children's point of view. But what I found so unexpectedly touching about the warden was that she had spent her childhood looking for that treasure, doing what she had the boys doing nonstop. The idea that she was so damaged, probably had some PTSD that was still active in her, so she was driven to continue to look. And that's why in the last scene, I think before she's taken away, I said to Andy, "You have to let her see what they found, and then she can rest." And so I did get to see it in the back of the car.
What we seem to have amongst us is a predator of some type. Most likely a coyote or a wolf.
So the village scared me to death. I just so believed in those we don't speak of. I didn't realize they weren't real until I got on the set, and then it became clear that they were sort of manufactured by the village to keep people in the neighborhood. I totally believed in them. It gave me nightmares. And again, wow, what an incredible ensemble. I was reunited with Bill Hurt, and I got to work with Judy Greer. I got to work with Bryce Dallas Howard. It was just an amazing group of people, and we all lived in the same house. And just from the dinner conversation, no matter what happened that day, an actor would somehow find a neurotic way of looking at it, like, they'd worked so hard on this presentation in the schoolhouse, and then the whole thing was shot on the kids. There would always be an element of tragedy in our dinner conversations, which was also very funny. I mean, you could make a very funny movie about actors living together. And I love The Village. I haven't seen it in a while, but I think that, Bryce and Joaquin are amazing. And, it's just a great cast.
How much lab training have you had?
I dissected a frog once.
You see? I mean, they're just pissing on us without even the courtesy of calling it rain. I'm going to Selfridge.
No, Grace.
No, man, this is such bullshit.
Somehow Jim picks people who will absolutely go the limit to serve the film. I remember him calling me, saying he was delivering this script to me personally. Like, I think John Lando had his son bring it on a plane and hand it to me, and I got to read it for 2 hours. And I quickly let him know that 2 hours was not long enough to read this script, because every page was so filled with things you couldn't believe, flying this and that. I mean, it's just like, how are you going to shoot any of this stuff? This is impossible. He's very demanding, but he demands the most of himself. Like, he really wants all the props to be practical. He doesn't want something that represents something, because it's not going to be, they're not going to film that. That's going to be transformed by what a digital into the real thing. No, he wants Brad, the prop guy, to come with something that the cast can really hold and use. I'm sure it's one of the reasons he cast me as a 14-year-old, because we kind of bring that out in each other, that immature part. But I was very grateful to go back into my adolescence, where I was quite miserable, and revisit that time. It was actually very healing for me, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to do that. I'm on. Playing Grace and Carrie at the same time is exactly my repertory theater ideal. And in fact, Grace has a lot more to do in 2 and 3 than I think Jim realized. That relationship between the mother and the child is, to me, so moving. It's in the script, but again, Grace is a larger presence. And so I really did get to do that. I really did get to play the scamp and the scientist. And that's so satisfying.
Open fire! Open fire!
Come about!
Coming about!
Get me round!
I hope that Fire and Ash does well. Una Chaplin is amazing as Varang, and so is Zoe. Everyone in it is so great. It's such an amazing story. I mean, it absolutely is the most amazing E-ride with the 3D and everything. And yet it's about these huge, huge themes of family and home and planet and community, war and refuge and, being a refugee. It's about all these big things. But if it does well, we'll get to do 4 and 5, which are even more amazing. And I just reread them all. He wrote these all in 2013. They hang together like nobody's business. So many jokes, character jokes, and he was writing us before we'd ever set foot on the stage. He knew who these people were intimately. So, I just doff my hat to him. He's just amazing. I really find it so moving to do these movies. I feel like they're about all of us. Yeah, we may have ears and tails, etc., and we may be blue, but these are all things that are important to humans. And he's encouraging us also to protect our planet as the Na'vi try to protect theirs. I don't think my job could ever be boring. I don't repeat myself as far as I'm concerned, unless I'm actually playing the same part. And even then, it's quite different. I love the theater, but most of the repertory theaters are gone, and that was what I wanted to be, was an actor in a repertory company, out in the regionals. That to me was like the best life possible. Play the maid 1 month, and then play the queen the next month, and do comedy 1 month, and then do tragedy the next. I just thought that was, and I've tried to do that in my film career, leaping from Ghostbusters to Ice Storm to whatever it is. That's been very satisfying to me.